Okay, we are live with another Ovadia Heart Health telemedicine live stream, and I'm delighted, privileged to have as a guest Louie Ruvolo. Did I pronounce that right?
Yes, very good.
Many of you probably know Louie from X, where he's got a lot of followers, and he's making a really big impact with his personal story. Which is really remarkable. And I mean, he's had a life transformation, and not only that, he's sharing what he's learned, both in recovery from alcoholism and as a ultra runner and triathlete, endurance athlete. He's just doing remarkable things at age 60. Something that I know a little bit about being 60. I do not know about running 100 miles. But I'm looking forward to getting into a conversation. Before we start, I have to put up our disclaimer because this is part of the Ovadia Heart Health medical practice, and we just have to get this out of the way real quick. So this is any information, any discussion here is not advice or treatment. Neither Louie or I are doctors, and even if we were, anything we said wouldn't be advice. To replace any sort of professional medical advice. And so any discussion that you want to have, you have it with your own doctor, or if you want to speak to someone at Ovadia Heart Health, email team@ifixhearts.com. And if you're looking to improve the metabolic health of your workplace, go to ovadiahearthealth.com/wellness. All right, now we got that out of the way. I am really looking forward to getting into this conversation, Louie. I don't even know where to start. Maybe Tell people a little bit about yourself, and maybe an overview of where you were and what got you there, and then how you transformed your life. You were struggling 20 years ago for sure, right?
Yes, yeah. And thank you for the kind words at the beginning, Chris. I really appreciate it. You are one of my friends on Twitter that I look up to, and I have looked up to for a long time. And you may not be pushing the limits of ultramarathon running, but you are certainly pushing the limits of strength training and conditioning at the age of 60 also. And I'm inspired daily by you. So thank you for the kind words. And I just wanted to put that back out there.
Well, thank you. And I think this it goes back and forth when we see others who are doing things that we might not imagine that we're capable of. Even if I never run 100 miles, people like you and you inspired me when I ran a marathon, which is 26 miles. And you just never know how what you do and put out publicly is affecting and helping other people. So tell us a little bit about the backstory of what got you, where you were and what things were like when you were in your 30s and maybe even before.
Yeah. So, I started drinking and smoking cigarettes, and I fell into this crowd of really great people and friends and neighbors. But when we were very young, it just seemed to be socially what we did was we started smoking at 12 years old, 13 years old, both cigarettes and pot. And we started drinking around the same age. And I was a shy kid. I was small. I was new to the neighborhood at the time. And alcohol and drugs just seemed to take away a lot of anxiety that I had, social anxiety. And at the time that I started using, I immediately felt more accepted. I felt bigger. I felt less shy. And that was the first time I experienced drinking. And It was at a party at a very young age, like I said, and I chased that feeling for a long, long time. It worked so well for me at that age that that I kind of fell in, that I kind of quickly turned it into a habit at a very young age. And I mean, I wasn't drinking daily at the age of 12, but by 14 years old, I was looking for any type of party on the weekend with my friends, and alcohol and drugs were always involved from basically from that point on. And by the age of 17, I became a daily drinker, and that really um, slowed my growth and maturity as turning to a young adult with that type of habit. So I've been thinking a little bit about my past, because many friends of mine at this age, at the age of 60, that I think back to those years of 10, 12, 14, 20 years old. Many of those friends that drank heavily with me are dead now, many of them. And some of them are sober, fortunately. Some of them are still doing okay. Some of them changed those habits. But many, many of them have died, many. And fortunately, I was able to get off of that ride before before it completely took me down.
Well, I've had the opportunity to talk to you before. I wrote an article about your story about a year and a half ago, which I really enjoyed getting the chance to talk to you, and I learned so much, and I, was inspired. So you tell me, this went on for a long time, a good part of your life, and you said that it destroyed aspects of your life, and at some point you came to a revelation that you needed to do something to change that. What was it that um, that caused you to say, "Hey, enough is enough," or what was the process like, and how did you do it? I think there's probably people listening right now um, who who are probably hanging on every word, just like what is it that is the magic? That's what everybody wants to hear. Tell me what caused the transformation and what that process was like.
Well, really, the transformation began when I decided that I no longer wanted to live that way. So whether it's alcohol, drugs, relationship, uh, our diet that's not healthy for us, other habits or behaviors. When we get to the point where we no longer want to be living that way, that is really the springboard to success. Because until then, I just while I was in it, probably between the ages of 20 and 37, um, multiple times I wanted to either stop drinking or fix my drinking so it wasn't creating so much damage and chaos in my life. But I didn't want it more than I wanted to continue to pick up a drink. So it's very difficult to stop or to encourage or to talk somebody else into stopping um, when it doesn't when it's not that high on their priority list. At the age of 37, it got right to the top of my priority list, because I saw the damage that it was doing to my family, to my daughter, which I had responsibility to be around and raise. And I knew at the age of 37, I would not have lived much longer if I didn't make some changes. So once it worked itself that high up on my priority list, I was able to address it.
Man, that's powerful. You know, I I recently started working as a health coach within the Ovadia Heart Health telemedicine practice, and that was sort of a culmination of a journey that I've been on, where I've learned a lot about um, the process of changing one's life through, just changes to your lifestyle. And I've spent a lot of time thinking about like why some people succeed and others fail. I know after talking to you last time, a year and a half ago, I started thinking a lot about a guy who I was friends with and I used to work with. His name was John, and he was the same age as me, so basically the same age as you. And he died at age 40, and he left behind two relatively young children. And it was a really sad, tragic situation. And he drank himself to death. And I could see when he talked about his kids, when he talked about other aspects of his life. He was a musician. He wanted to live. There was something that was driving him, but he wasn't able to put that on the top priority like you just described. And I just wonder, now that you probably have, I mean, probably thousands. I mean, you've got over 12,000 people following you on X, and I know a lot of them are very well aware of your story. So I'm sure that a lot of them have been touched by alcohol in one way or another. In fact, probably most of us have been touched by it, either with a family member or themselves. It's such a common thing. But I guess my question is, have you figured out any ways to try to help people change the order of their priorities, help empower them to make that decision, give them information that might make it more likely that they would succeed? Or is this something that simply the person has to figure out on their own?
Well, I learned very early in my sobriety that that people watch what we do. Other people watch what we do. So I was working with a group of men before I got sober, and they saw my lifestyle and my behavior while I was still drinking, and they watched my transition into sobriety. And it didn't take long before one of them came to me and said, "Hey, I see how you conduct your life now, and I wonder if you can help me out." And then he told me about some issues that he was having. He was actually a heroin addict, and he asked me if I could help him. So that situation, that scenario has happened many, many times with me over the past 20 years, many, many times. When that door opens, I take full opportunity to help another person. Occasionally, when I see somebody really struggling, I will explain to them that I will, without being prompted, I will go to them and say, "Hey, look, let me tell you a little bit about my story." Or I can just get right into it. I can say, "Listen, this is where I was many years ago. If you ever want help, let me know." I do that on occasion, but very infrequently, because I'm not looking to force my will on other people. I'm not looking to force my lifestyle on other people. I would prefer to be a power of example, and then when and if somebody thinks that I can help them, then and they open the door, then I will. Then I'll follow up. I'll follow up the right from that point. They don't have to say another word.
Well, that's tremendous. So I guess this is a good opportunity for me to throw on the screen your Twitter or X profile. You've, as I said, you've got over 12,000 followers, and your handle is Louie Ruvolo. So people can follow you there. I'm going to throw up another one that I've seen a couple of times. And it's quite a contrast between the two pictures that are on the screen right there. The first one is you when you were not in great shape and sick from alcohol. And the second one is a guy that's 60 years old and is capable of running 100 miles. And you certainly look pretty vibrant, healthy, and like you're ready to take charge. What does looking at that contrast of two images, do to you. I mean, I can see it in your face, both now here on the screen and in that second picture. But just give me a little bit about, what that means and what your life is like now. And then I want to get into talking a lot about the incredible athletic achievements that you've racked up.
Yeah. So when I look at that picture, there are very few. By the way, there are very few pictures of me while I was drinking. Very, very few, because I didn't keep them around.
Louie,
proud.
I know the feeling, just because as someone who weighed 278 pounds at one time, there's not a lot of pictures of me weighing 278 pounds, and somehow I managed to get rid of or hide behind when people were taking the pictures. But I can understand that. So go ahead. I'm sorry for interrupting.
No problem. You know exactly where I'm coming from there. That picture came from my father's computer. He opened his computer and we were looking through some old family pictures. He had thousands of pictures on his computer, and we came across that picture, and I didn't even recognize myself at first. I was 20 years sober at the time, the first time I saw that picture. And it broke my heart to look at that. And it scared me to look at that, because not just because I'm overweight, my face is puffy, the position that the hurt that I was in, that's really not what bothers me about the picture. The part that bothers me is I look hopeless, and that's fucking scary. Like living a life, being at a point in life where I've lost hope, or anyone has lost hope. That's just a terrible, terrible place to be. And I put that up there every once in a while because I fear that people think that things just came easy for me. I mean, you probably get this also, Chris. Like you're so spot on with your lifestyle, and we see this structure of this strong man with a beautiful family and vibrant 60-year-old man, and we think that things must have come easy for you, and it's important for me to show people that I had some clawing to do to get out of the hole. I mean, it was hard to get out of the hole. So
yes, I can relate, and I like I love your Twitter feed. So inspirational. For whether somebody, it doesn't really matter. I mean, I think you would be profoundly helpful for anyone with an alcohol problem, but clearly there's other addictions, and there's other problems that people suffer from. And I think you hit it on the head when you talked about hope. There are so many people that have given up hope, maybe not for their entire life, but given up hope to ever become a healthy weight, given up hope to ever regain their metabolic health. And when you've given up hope, the chances of ever accomplishing that thing go down to probably almost near zero, because without hope, how do you move forward? You have to believe that something is possible to give the effort that's required if it's a difficult thing to do.
absolutely, and that's a big part of my message on Twitter, is that that if you're in a tough spot and you're not happy with your position in life, the place you are, there are ways to get out of it, and I try to give people hope as far as that goes.
Question, let me tell you where I come from this. With respect to solving problems, solving challenges, I used to try to solve all my challenges on my own. I was oftentimes embarrassed by where I was, and I didn't want to get anyone else involved in knowing my details, knowing about my problem, my struggle to, say, lose weight or to improve, maybe things that I should have known how to do. I didn't want to ask anyone for help. And I think that I'm learning that I'm not the only one who feels that way, because now that I have a big Twitter following and I have a weekly email that I send out, I have people send me direct messages or emails asking me questions, but they usually do it after stalking the email or the Twitter for a while, and they I can tell that they were hesitating sometimes for months before even asking the question. And in my own life, I've become much more willing to just say, hey, like, Louie, I saw that you ran 100 miles. I could never envision doing that. What kind of advice would you have for me? And I would just ask the question. And the worst that could happen is you could say, no, I'm not going to help you. But like I've gotten accustomed to just asking for help. Any thoughts on that, and any advice for people that are sort of struggling on their own back in the shadows?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in our society, I mean, this might be an old school thought, but as men, we were supposed to be able to handle anything that happened that came down the pike, and asking for help could have been viewed as a sign of weakness. And the truth is, it takes great confidence to go to somebody and say, "Hey, I need some help with this." And the truth is also that nobody knows how to do everything, and nobody has the ability to do everything. So it was a very humbling experience when I got sober, because I needed to go to a friend and talk with that friend and tell them that I needed help getting out of this situation. They knew it. I mean, they watched it. But the point is, they can't really do much. They couldn't really do much for me until they saw that I was in a position to ask for help and really wanted it. So it was a humbling experience to have to do that, and it was not only difficult to ask for help, but it was difficult for me to show up once they told me they would help me. So I called some friends that had been sober for a while, asked them if they would help me go to a meeting and show me a little bit about sobriety. And they agreed to it, and we made a time where we would meet. And I didn't show up, because I didn't show up for anything back then. I just couldn't. I couldn't show up. So one of my friends cooked the following week. Cooked a nice Italian meal for me, and I'm a sucker for that. And I was probably half starved to death anyway. And the lasagna is what got me over to their house, and then from there we followed through, and we ended up going to a meeting. And then I got into a community that accepted me with open arms, and that community just took care of me and showed me the way. So.
All right, so let's move on a little bit, and we can come back, and maybe there'll be some more questions about different things that we've already covered. But I'm really curious about sharing with the audience, and we've got close to 600 people listening live right now as we're talking, and this is going to be up on YouTube afterwards, where people can listen to the recording. And if anybody wants to go to YouTube now, that's on the iFix Hearts YouTube channel. You can actually ask questions right into this feed, and we'll see them. So if anybody has questions, definitely go for it. And you can also find this same feed on Dr. Philip Ovadia's LinkedIn page. But anyway, tell me about how a former alcoholic who was down on just about every aspect of life decides to start doing distance running.
So I was always interested in endurance sports, and but I was never disciplined enough to continue to show up and to train, because alcohol always came first. So before I got sober, I was a member of a karate dojo. My friend was the sensei, and he opened the dojo, and I was his first student. That was about 4 years before I got sober. And I trained in that dojo for a few years, but my consistency continually got worse as I got closer to the date that I stopped drinking, because my disease just continued to progress. So by the time I got sober, I was not able to show up at that dojo probably for the last 6 months of my drinking. Once once I got sober, I went back to the dojo, and so now I have a community that was that I could use to help me get physically fit, mentally stronger, and I also had a community that would help me with my sobriety. So I spent probably the next 10 or 12 years training at that dojo, and I progressed through the ranks pretty well, and I got to a certain rank where I was interested in doing more sparring. We didn't do a lot of sparring at my dojo, so I went outside of the dojo and started training in another gym, but stuck with my original training also. And I was sparring these guys that were much, much bigger than me and younger than me and faster than me. And I realized that if I had better cardio and I could control my wind, I would be able to find an advantage during these sparring matches. And so I started running immediately. Like I just bought a pair of running shoes, went out the door, started running. A month later, I'm still training at the other gym, and I felt my wind getting stronger. And then eventually I fell in love with the running. And which is not surprising, because my mother was a marathon runner in the 1970s. And my father was also an endurance athlete. And so it wasn't surprising that I really fell in love with that training. And eventually I left the dojo to do some obstacle course racing, to get more into obstacle course racing, get more into marathon running, and then triathlons. And it just continued to grow over the next decade or so to ultramarathons.
Wow. So you followed in your mother's footsteps, and your father also was an endurance runner or athlete.
My father was a cyclist, a competitive cyclist.
So
yeah.
So that's an interesting backstory. It's and interesting that you started. So what age were you when you really when you did your first long run, say a marathon?
Oh, so I did I told this story on Twitter at one point. So I ran my first mile in my late 40s. In my mid to late 40s, I ran my first mile, and I think it took me 14 or 15 minutes to run that mile. And then I think at age 51, I ran my first marathon, and my pace was much faster.
And how long was it before you ran the 100-miler?
I ran 9 marathons. I guess I was probably 57 years old, and I started training for a 50-mile ultramarathon. And I had a lot of problems, physical problems, from pushing myself in my training. And then I hired Ryan Dreyer, who is my coach, and he helped me get into ultramarathon running.
And from what I see on X, it looks like you have yet another community that you found in the endurance sport realm. Tell me a little bit about that. How many people are involved in this community that you've got, I guess, through Ryan?
Yeah, so Ryan has a community called Tribal Training, and there are about 60 members, and we do triathlons. We train for triathlons together. We train for marathons or ultramarathons. We train for shorter distance races together. And then Zach Hummel, who is also kind of linked to Ryan and linked to Tribal Training, has a community called Do Hard Things. And I'm also part of that community, and there's more strength training involved in that. and we have some we do some ultra marathons together. We're actually doing one on Sunday. We're meeting up in Indy, and we come from all over the country. I mean, there'll be I don't know if there'll be 10 or 12 of us in Indy for this coming weekend.
So I just want to make sure I've got your, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it sounds like all of your transformational aspects of your life, you've figured out ways to get some support in your life by teaming up with other people or to align with a community. Is that correct? I mean, it seems like I assume it's AA that you're working with, and then you found a community related to the dojo, and then you've got one or two communities with endurance running. I mean, it sounds like something that I've talked to a lot of experts in a lot of different areas. I've had the opportunity to do a lot of interviews and write a lot of articles, speak to a lot of doctors, and it is something that they almost all will tell me that when I ask, what makes the difference between success and failure, they say support in the person's life, and also absence of antagonism. Like a lot of people are in a family and they try to change their life, and for whatever reason, another family member may not want that person to succeed or may not want that person's life to change, and they throw up roadblocks to make it more difficult. So that's the opposite of support. It's definitely something that we talk about a lot within the Ovadia Heart Health telemedicine practice. We talk about community and support with the clients and the patients and among our own team. It's like everybody, even with our own internal team, there's a lot of support, and I just have my own experience kind of echoes what you're describing. So I just want to sort of pound that in for the audience's benefit. A lot of people try to go this alone, and whether it's hiring a coach or finding another person that wants to kind of team up with you and do it together, or finding a Facebook group or a group on X, some way, somehow you've got to find a way to sort of gather some support. It makes the job a whole lot easier.
Yeah, well said, Chris. I mean, right from the beginning, I drank in isolation. I isolated myself when I was drinking, and Super Bowl just passed last weekend, and if I was still drinking, I would not have been out at a bar drinking. I would drink at home like I like to, with nobody around, in isolation, and I recovered in a community, and I really got to know the benefits from the dojo of training with other people, the mental and physical, spiritual, emotional benefits from doing that. And then when I left the dojo, I trained by myself to run marathons for 5 years or so, until Ryan and I linked up. And when Ryan and I linked up, it opened a whole new world for me, a whole new world. And now training with Zach, it's a pleasure every day to check in with the guys and see who's pushing and get motivation that way, and see what's possible, what other people are doing, and bringing things to the table. It's really a nice way to be able to conduct myself. I feel very, very fortunate to be parts of those communities.
So tell people, I realize that probably a small portion of 1% of the world will ever do anything close to running 100 miles, and some larger portion will run a marathon, but it's still a relatively small portion of the population. But tell people what you get out of the ultra running, and how you got from point A to point B. I mean, 1 mile running at age 40 in 14 minutes or 13 minutes. I think a lot of the people listening can relate to that. But how does 1 mile become 5, and 5 become 20, and then just keep on going? And tell me about the rewards as well. I know what it feels like to finish a marathon, and honestly, it was crossing the line with my wife was one of the best days of my life. And, you know, I had family there, and it was just such an achievement that I never would have dreamed possible. Talk to me a little bit about your experience and the fact, you know, like what it's like to go. I mean, and how long does it take you to run 100 miles?
Oh, my fastest 100-mile ultra was just under 23 hours.
Oh
So,
man,
that was my fastest.
oh my gosh, I can't even stay awake for 24 hours.
Yeah, I normally don't either. So,
you know, go ahead. Tell me the good things that that you experience from doing something that seems so unbelievably difficult.
So in early sobriety, I remember going to an AA meeting, and there was a man there that had been sober for 2 months, and I was in my first week or two, and he had been sober for 2 months, and he walked up to the front of the room and got a chip, a 2-month chip, and I was in awe of this man. Like, I just thought to myself, I wonder if I could stay away from a drink for 2 months, and that became my goal. And then I saw people that were sober for a year, and I thought, wow, I wonder if I can. I wonder if I have the ability to be disciplined enough to do this, to be sober for a year. That was how it started. And then one day I was at my dojo, and I thought, I wonder if I could ever become a brown belt at the dojo. And then I wondered if I could ever become a black belt at the dojo. I have far exceeded my goals in sobriety, or even my imagination in sobriety. And I far exceeded my imagination at the dojo many times. And that started happening with me with running, with endurance races and running distances. And at one point I thought to myself, I wonder if I could train enough and be disciplined enough to run a half marathon. And then I reached a half marathon. And then, like you, I trained for a marathon. And I remember crossing that finish line like you were describing, Chris. It was just I don't know, it was just this magical experience. Maybe that's how you described it. But seeing my parents and seeing my mom, and I gave you get a nice medal when you finish. And I gave this medal to my mom, and I said, Mom, I did the training for me, but I did the race for you, because I knew it would make her happy, So, so then I ran multiple marathons, and I started thinking, I wonder if, like, I hear about people that run 50 miles. I wonder if I could do that. So, that was just how it was born, how all of those ideas were born. And I happen to have a lot of grit. Like, I have a lot of, it's either grit or stubbornness, or I don't know what it is. But
Louie, you don't have to tell people you have a lot of grit when you run 100 miles. That goes without saying. I gotta tell you that.
All right, good.
But no, I believe you. And let's see what are there times? Oh, what I was going to ask you was, have you noticed a change in your mentality? You talk about the 2-month chip, and sort of looking at things as like goals with an end point almost, to where I'm predicting that your answer is going to be that somewhere along the line you made this a life journey, and that there is no end, like it's part of your life. I know you got to take it one day at a time, but are you resolved that like you are a runner, and that you are a person that doesn't drink, and that you're going to figure out a way to just keep moving ahead? What is your mentality? I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Yes, I am. And I had to really resolve to that fact that I am a person that doesn't drink a long time ago. I had to become that person, and with all of me knowing that's who I was. I'm in an interesting place now in my running career, because I still train hard, and I don't feel, I no longer train hard to get faster.
Mm-hmm.
I train hard to get slower, more slowly, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does. Well, at age 60, I mean, there's got to be a dose of realism, and you
Yeah.
know, and even if you were still getting faster, even if you do still get faster, it won't go on forever. We know that, and that sort of actually tempers our attitude towards things. I mean, I was going to ask you also about um, your sense of gratitude, which I see come through in your tweets or your posts frequently, and I can personally relate to feeling a gratitude that I maybe didn't really have when I was in my 40s or 50s, where I was getting fat and out of shape, and I wasn't healthy, and yet I didn't savor the wonder that every day really should be. And after going through a cancer scare, um, I started realizing that, for all of us, this is going to come to an end. And at some point, and we have, one life, and, we have to make the most of it if we're smart. And so I ever since that, and that's now been 6 years, I literally am grateful every day that I wake up and I think about that. I just kind of want to get your take on that.
Yeah, my backstory is a little bit different than yours with cancer, but I think there are some similarities there, and the gratitude for being able to live a healthy life at this point is overwhelming for me at times, just totally overwhelming. Like some days I wake up and I'm just so thankful to be clear-headed and excited to start the day. I sit on my porch. In the winter, it's an indoor porch, and in summer, it's an outdoor porch. And I drink a cup of coffee and listen to the birds. And I'm just so thankful for some peace of mind and my good health and my family and. Yeah, I mean, I think coming from a background where there's a chance that we won't survive, um, it's normal, I think, to feel some gratitude, quite a bit of gratitude.
What are you working on now in terms of your running career? Do you have a big race on the calendar, or what's going on as we
Yeah,
speak?
so the Do Hard Things community is gathering in just outside of Indy this coming Sunday, and we have a 12-hour race that is there's a 4.1 mile loop, and it has about 700 feet of elevation gain in the loop. It's a trail run, and every hour on the hour you start another loop. So so if a runner is able to do all 12 loops, it would turn into a 50-mile ultramarathon. Yeah, so we have that on the books. I'm going to be pacing a friend of mine in the Tahoe 200, which I'm really excited about. So that's a multi-day ultramarathon. Have a 100-miler on my schedule for the summer, and a couple other things.
Let me just put. Well, let's see. I'm going to put up two shots real quick. One, that is the finish of your first 100 miler.
That's actually the finish of my third 100 miler. That's the Vermont 100 in up in Vermont, and that's a really old school ultramarathon in our country. It's got
Okay.
17,000 feet of elevation gain, and it's 100 miles.
What does it feel like when you see the finish line of a 100-mile race?
At that point I feel relief, because probably the last 10 or 15 miles is just a grind that I'm not sure if I'm going to survive, like really that hard.
I believe it. I really can't fathom it. I got to tell you, my wife and I, at mile marker 22 of the LA marathon, um, we really started having our doubts. Like, was this going to happen? I think if we were not both there with each other, that neither one of us would have been able to finish it. I'm not. I have no way of knowing, but we really we slowed down for about a half a mile, and then we picked it back up and finished strong. But I can't imagine, like when I crossed the line, I laid down on the concrete for maybe like 5 or 6 minutes without moving, and then finally got up and walked down the corral. But if someone told me that I had 75 miles to go after running 25, I'd say not a chance in the world. So you have all my respect. Let's see, what else do we want to talk about? I mean, we've been on for a long time. We can actually wrap it up, but is there anything else you'd like to say? And as you're thinking about that, I am going to put up your X account one more time, because I honestly feel like you're one of the best accounts out there, and you post so much uplifting stuff. And I know that a lot of the stuff that you post, not only could change lives, but is changing lives. Probably every single week. So if you're not following Louie, give him a follow. Louie Ruvolo on X. Are you anywhere else online, Louie, or is that your main place?
No, I tried to do Instagram, but I don't really know how that works.
Okay, well, he's really good at X, and if you're not on X, I would say that he's a good enough reason to at least open up an account just to gather information. And anything else you want to say, Louie, before we wrap up?
Yeah, I mean, I would, just to kind of circle back to the community thing, I would encourage people to look for help in setting big goals, like you and I spoke about, Chris. If it's sobriety, there's a group that can help. If it's other forms of health, there are groups out there that can help. If it's fitness, there are groups that can help. And I'm happy to help in any way, and to point people in directions when they need help, or to talk with people if they need help. I often get DMs, people asking me, how to make a step or how to make a move, and I'm happy to do that. Happy to chat if anybody wants to. Just hit me up.
Yeah, one more thing occurred to me, and that's great. I think anybody that needs that kind of help, an offer like Louie just made could change your life. You have any advice for somebody, Louie? You don't have to get too far into it, but for somebody that is interested in starting running, since you have kind of experienced the full spectrum, especially at age 40, you hadn't accomplished much in the way of running, and now you've accomplished a tremendous amount. What would you advise someone to do, if they're still laying on the couch?
My advice is always to go out for a walk. So if and when people come to me and ask me how they can get started in running, I would tell them to go out for a walk, a 1 mile walk 4 times a week. A 1 mile walk 4 times a week, and do that for a few weeks. And then during that 1 mile walk, you can run between telephone poles. So you would do maybe 3/4 of it would be walking, and a little bit of running, a little bit of jogging. And that's really how we do it. That's really how we break into it. We turn a 1 mile walk into a walk run, and then a little bit more running, and then stretch out the distance. If anybody really wanted a program to start, and you shoot me a DM, I could write it up on paper for you really fast. So.
Awesome. And one last thought. I want to compliment that incredible motor vehicle I saw that you posted. You travel around in style now. Very impressive. That looks like a good way to travel. And I saw that you said you spent some time sleeping in a tent on some of your races, and that you're not going to do that anymore. You guys should go on X and check out Louie's motorhome. It's quite a nice vehicle.
Yeah, it's something that I've thought about doing for a long time. I was going to wait until I retire to buy it, and then, but I'm not going to be retiring for a little while here. So, decided to bring it home a little bit sooner. And yeah, I think I'm finished with the sleeping intense before 100 milers. I'm done with that.
Louie, this has been a real pleasure and a privilege for me. I really enjoy talking to you, and I know that a lot of people. I mean, we're up to close to 800 people online now, and I know that a lot of people are going to see this on YouTube, and the views are just going to go up from there. So you're really making a difference, and keep up the good work.
Oh, thank you, Chris. The pleasure's mine. Anytime I get to chat with you is always a pleasure, whether we're doing it face-to-face like this or we're doing it just through some text on X. And maybe when we get that motorhome going and we're heading in your direction, we'll look you up and stop in.
Great. I would love to be at a race with you one day, even if I no guarantees that I'll ever go past 25 or 26.2, but if I'm ever in the area where you're running, I would love to see you cross the finish line on one of those 100-milers.
All right. Yeah, let's plan something. I would love that, Chris. Thank you.
Take care, Louie. Thanks again.
Yeah. Thank you.
Let's see.